Alright, movie fans, today's a good day because we get to talk about one of my favorite things to talk about, the Halloween franchise, specifically the original 1978 John Carpenter classic. Now, it's a good time to be both a video game fan and a classic horror movie fan. You got games like Alien Isolation, the Friday the 13th game that got shelved before we got, the best content that would have been Jason X content. You got more recently the Texas Chainsaw game, the Killer Clowns from Outer Space game. But now, finally, the man himself, the shape himself, Michael Myers, is coming to video game form for the first time since the early 80s. Well, minus a technicality by Dead by Daylight, but in his own game, Michael Myers is getting his own game for the first time in a very long time. So this report comes from IGN, so a trusted actual media outlet when it comes to video game news, is that we're getting not one, but two video games based off the original Halloween movie, and it doesn't just stop there. Original film director John Carpenter is attached to this project. Now, in what capacity, we don't really know. So before I go into my own thoughts, theories, and speculation, let's actually break down the whole article from IGN itself. So let me read that real quick. Two new games based on the 1978 horror classic Halloween are in development at Boss Team Games, IGN can exclusively reveal. While details are limited, both games are apparently being developed in conjunction with the producers of the Halloween franchise. What's more, one of the games is being developed in Unreal Engine 5 and will include input from original director John Carpenter. According to the official release, the games will allow players to relive moments from the film and play as classic characters from one of the most iconic and important horror films of all time. The two new games are being developed in association with Compass International Pictures and Furtherfront, with the Unreal Engine 5 project still early in development. The article goes on to say that this is basically the same creative team that made Evil Dead the video game, so they have some experience adapting a beloved horror franchise to video game form. Now, a lot of people are already kind of chiming in saying that this will be an asymmetrical horror game, very much in the same vein as the Evil Dead video game, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw. It's all the rage right now. Killer Clowns just did the exact same thing of having one killer and a bunch of survivors, and the survivors have an objective, and the killer has to take them all out before completing said objective. I do, but I don't want that for Halloween. Just personally, until I've thought about more extensive options, I've always wanted that just because I played the Friday the 13th game so much. I get that it was glitchy and buggy and just wonkdified, but I've always wanted that for Halloween because I'm more attached to that franchise than I am for Friday the 13th. Play as like Laurie or Annie or Bob, and then the power-up that you can get later in the game would be Dr. Loomis, who could potentially have like 6 shots in his pistol. That's it, and you have to nail all 6 shots on Michael to fully knock him down. But I also always thought of that game existing with the sequels in mind, because here's the problem that you might run into with Halloween being an asymmetrical game. There's not a lot of characters to pick from compared to other horror franchises. They really focus a lot on Laurie in the first one, with Loomis more or less chasing Michael, but he's not as much in the first one as you think. He more is a presence in the later movies and the sequels where he just goes absolutely off the rails. It is a very small cast for that original Halloween, and they are making a big emphasis that one or probably both of these games will revolve around the original Halloween, which I think is super, super cool, because for a while there, we got a lot of Halloween 2 stuff because Universal held the distribution rights for it, but I'm glad we're getting more and more classic Halloween stuff. That being said, as much as the first one is one of my favorite movies of all time, it might be a little limiting on just putting the first movie, depending on what they're doing. So let's go off the assumption that this is an asymmetrical game. Cool. I don't care if I'm Michael, I don't care if I'm Laurie, I don't care if I'm Bob. Just the fact that you could potentially have fun and loiter around Haddonfield. I know Dead by Daylight did that already when they had their Hell Comes to Haddonfield pack, when you could be Laurie, Michael, and just play on that map. I would love a more extensive version of that. The fun thing that comes into play here is, since we're getting 2, we could get the asymmetrical horror aspect of it, of Michael versus the people of Haddonfield. But then we could get something that I had never thought we would get, of a single-player Halloween game in the style of Alien Isolation. If that's true, shut up and take all of my money, please. I don't care what you have to do. I need that game. I'm fine with the multiplayer Halloween game. I'm fine with any Halloween game, to be honest. But give me both options of a multiplayer game, then give me a story player. Oh, a single player story mode. Oh, yes, please. Now, if that was the case, what's the story here? We'll circle back to the John Carpenter thing, because I think that's super fascinating. But if we got a story-focused Halloween game, what would you do? Because as cool as it would be to just relive the first movie in video game form, I don't know if the movie lends itself to video game, if that makes sense. Now, Alien Isolation had some clever story components to it. There were some workarounds to it that it made logical sense. For me, if I'm pitching this game, I would pick up the game immediately after the events of the first movie. Since they're only really talking about the first one, it's the dreaded word when it comes to Halloween, but in a separate branch timeline, we gotta keep doing it because this is the Halloween way, so to speak. Pick it up immediately after the events of the first one, like Loomis coming downstairs like he does in Halloween 2, like the original one, seeing Michael not on the ground, and you are either Loomis or someone in Haddonfield while Michael is still on the loose. I don't think we necessarily need Laurie, as cool as that would be. We got enough Laurie for Halloween 2 and all the subsequent sequels that she may or may not have popped up in. But if you're someone just in Haddonfield and your goal is to try and get back home or to be like a babysitter trying to figure out where your kids have been while Michael's on the loose, oh, I think that would be super, super cool. That's just an out-of-the-box idea. Now, circling back to the asymmetrical thing. Maybe, just maybe, they're talking about the original movie for one of the games, because until it's confirmed, I still kind of hold out hope that we can talk about the other Halloween movies, because I know the first one is still the most beloved and people put it on a pedestal, and rightly so. But as a fan of the whole franchise, there are characters and elements to the sequels that I would love to also get their time to shine. Whether it's being able to play as Rachel from Halloween 4 and part of 5. Logistically, it might be hard to play as Jamie, just because I don't know if a video game developer would want to put a small child in a game that could potentially be killed by Michael if you're playing as Michael, or bring in Jimmy from Halloween 2. Heck, have Ben Tramer as DLC and put in your own version of Ben Tramer, because we've never actually seen him in a movie. Well, but circling back to John Carpenter, I think this is super fascinating that he's involved with this. My first hope, more than anything, is that he's involved with the music. I think it's funny that he's openly talked about, I'm a big video game person, but he hasn't really worked on video games. He doesn't really work on video games. He's just like, people just haven't really asked me. And when it comes to Halloween, he stays away and is just like, here, pay me. Do whatever you want with the franchise, but as long as I'm still getting my residuals, I don't care. So the fact that he's actually working closely with the production team on this, I think is super, super cool. I loved the music that he did for the new Halloween trilogy. I liked most of his music from 1 through, I believe he did 1 through 3, maybe 4. I love John Carpenter's music, especially when it comes to Halloween. So if he's coming back for a new score, I don't care how bad this game is. And I'm not saying it would be bad, but you could just sell me hot garbage. But if you tell me there's new John Carpenter music, I'm going to be there in a heartbeat. I'm wondering just how much story-wise he's involved with it. And that could be either a good thing or a bad thing. Because as much as I like the fact that Michael and Laurie are brother and sister, I can go either way with it. I like some of the story directions that it takes, and I don't like some of the story directions that it takes. That was 100% John Carpenter's idea. And at one point, John Carpenter almost sent Michael Myers to space. That's a whole other story for another day. But it's super interesting that he's connected to this. I really, really like the idea that we're getting 2 Halloween games here, because it means we can experiment with things. We could do a single player story mode or a single player story game, which I really think that might be the route that we're going here. Or we can get that Friday the 13th, Killer Clowns, Texas Chainsaw of Michael versus the town. In which case, if that's it, I kind of hope we open up the roster to other people. Like, I like the characters from the first one, but if we want more robust roster to work with, that works for both our protagonist and our Michael Myers, because I would love to see the different incarnations of Michael be playable. Like, Michael in H2O is very different than Michael in Halloween 2 or Halloween 4 or the Rob Zombies. I would love to see all the different Michael Myers, like we got all the different Jasons in the Friday the 13th game. Either way, this just made me super excited because it's the one thing I've been asking for forever of if everybody's getting a new horror game, where's Halloween? Why has that not been a thing? Because that's one of the more active franchises lately, especially with that rebooted TV show and potentially new movie series that we're getting. That's going to up in the air. I think we'll get more news about that in the coming weeks, especially coming spooky season in October. But what do you guys think? Are you excited for not one, but two Halloween video games? What do you think the direction that these games could go? Whatever your thoughts, let me know down in the comments below. As I like hearing from you guys. And as always, if you like what you see and want to see more, subscribe to the channel. And as always, stay sharp, movie guys and gals.